Look up. The thing that rattles her most is the man who outgrows her without a single announcement. You don't change to spite her. You change because staying the same became unbearable. You stop living for replies and begin living for results. Mornings shift from waiting for a message to working on a mission. Your phone becomes a tool, not a leash. You trade replaying old conversations for practicing new skills. The hours you once spent memorizing what she said are now invested in shaping what you will be. You stop framing your day around her availability and start scheming around your goals. This is quiet warfare. No fireworks, no public statements, no staged comebacks. Improvement sneaks in between habits and fills the gaps you left open. It is built in repetitions, not grand gestures. You don't parade it, you embody it. People notice the difference before they can explain it. She feels it as an absence at first, then as a new pattern she didn't expect to encounter. You used to give your emotional map away like free tickets. Now your route is private and guarded. Boundaries replace bargaining. Your calendar becomes a statement. You stop editing yourself for someone who already stopped editing you. Silence becomes a strategy. Not to punish, but to protect. You stop answering the rhythms of drama and start setting your own tempo. Where once she could pull you with a word, now she finds plates spinning that don't crumble when she breathes on them. That steadiness is disorienting. She has nothing to prod, no reaction to harvest. That absence of harvest will make her reevaluate value. You're not angry. You're not broken. You're reassembled. Confidence shows up in small practical ways. Punctuality, clear plans, a room owned without apology. Your posture says you have use for your time. Your speech tightens around purpose. You stop telling stories about loss and start telling plans about tomorrow. Your friends see a different GPS. They watch you drop old loops and pick up new lanes. You don't brag about progress. You show up with it as fact. Growth should make noise only by its results. She will pass by these facts and try to shrug them off as coincidence. She won't always succeed. Curiosity creeps in where certainty once lived. Her memory of who you were collides with the new person in front of her. It hurts because it means she no longer controls a version of you that used to be pliable. It shocks because you evolved without permission. That is the real shake. You didn't wait for closure. You built a better life in the middle of uncertainty. And when your life no longer bends to a past affinity, the silence around you becomes louder than anything she could have said. Keep your mornings sacred and your evenings purposeful. Let your ambitions replace old patterns of longing. Create obligations to yourself that feel heavier than gossip. Measure yourself by projects finished, not by opinions gathered. This quiet accountability becomes a horizon she can't reach. Let her memory of you be outpaced by what you build next. Grow until her absence no longer matters. There is a calm that unsettles more than anger ever could. It arrives after storms, when the small flares of drama no longer find purchase. Instead of reacting to every slight, you collect your breath and act from a place that doesn't need validation. That kind of silence carries weight because it signals control, not detachment. It tells her the man she knew no longer hands over his inner thermostat. This stillness is forged by surviving, not by pretending. When everything that once rattled you becomes background noise, your energy tightens into something compact and purposeful. You stop broadcasting your feelings like a weather report. You hold them close and let them inform action rather than noise. The old pattern of emotional overshare disappears because you learn discretion is stronger than explanation. Calm like this is active. It isn't peace as passivity, it's composed decision-making. You move with intent and fewer words. That economy of speech makes you unpredictable to those used to pulling strings. She can no longer trigger a predictable cascade of apologies, compromises, or confessions. Your reactions are measured, and that removes her map. When you answer less, your silence becomes a statement. People mistake it for distance, but it's discipline. You conserve energy for priorities that matter: physical health, skill growth, money, relationships that return value. This selection filters the noise from your life and concentrates power into fewer commitments. Others perceive that narrowing as elevation. Your presence ceases to be a playground for manipulation. Where she once nudged at you and watched the walls wobble, now there is reinforcement. Boundaries are erected not to punish but to preserve. You keep your time and your peace as non-negotiables. That refusal to be available on demand rearranges expectations and forces honesty without a single argument. This calm also makes you auditable. Your actions line up with words, and that consistency breeds credibility. People begin to understand who you are because you stop playing roles and start keeping promises to yourself. That clarity is disarming to someone who benefited from your inconsistency. You adopt listening as an armor. By quieting your voice, you learn to hear who someone truly is beneath the rehearsed persona. That discernment keeps you from being seduced by repetition. You refuse to re-enter loops that once defined you. Your tempo changes. Conversations that used to entangle you now pass by with no hook. There is a magnetism to someone unshakable. It draws attention not through spectacle but by implication. This person is anchored. That pull makes others assess their own instability. For those who once had sway, the effect is jarring. They expected leverage, they find solidity. This kind of control is not cruelty. It is a careful cultivation of inner territory. You build a life that doesn't require external permission. That autonomy leaves no room for manipulation or guilt as currency. Your value becomes self-contained. The more composed you become, the less your days orbit emotional contagion. Social drama shrinks. Your priorities tighten. And the quiet you embody turns into the loudest truth of all. Discipline outperforms drama every single time. Stay steady. Let your silence prove the distance your words couldn't bridge. You stop trading your worth for attention. Validation used to be a daily habit. Now it's a foreign routine you no longer practice. Your identity was once vulnerable to likes and comments and the soft approval of others. Today you anchor yourself to a plan, not applause. You trade the hunger for glances for a hunger to complete tasks that matter. That hunger feels cleaner and it compounds. Where attention once dictated your mood, outcomes now calibrate your value. You measure the day by what you build, not by who noticed. Small victories accumulate. A call returned, a chapter written, a weight lifted, a bill paid on time. Each of those wins proves you are moving in a direction you chose. They become your new currency. Vision reframes rejection. When someone walks away, it's filtered through possibility instead of defeat. You ask, what does this free me to create? Loss becomes a redirection, not a failure. This mindset forces your focus toward contribution over consumption. You begin to consume less drama and contribute more substance. Your schedule becomes sacred. You block time for progress and you defend those blocks. Distractions become interruptions to be cut. You stop apologizing for prioritizing your growth. People notice you are harder to schedule and easier to rely on for consistency. That reputation matters more than applause. Language changes. Instead of asking permission to be seen, you state intentions and deliver results. You speak about projects with dates and metrics, not feelings. Concrete language attracts allies who do the work. Vague sympathies fall away. Your sentences start closing deals with time and efficiency, not conversations and excuses. Focus adds a visible glow. People can tell the difference between someone spinning and someone steering. That glow is produced by repetition and restraint. You choose single tasking over scattered performance. Your days stop being a highlight reel and start becoming a build reel. That shift is stark because it is measurable and repeatable. Your attention becomes selective. You no longer invest emotional capital where there is no return. You audit relationships like you audit expenses. What brings growth, what drains it. You keep what compounds and cut what depreciates. That approach turns your social life into an asset allocation rather than a charity. Purpose creates friction with past habits. Old comforts resist the new structure. You feel temptation to revert, but you've learned to value forward motion more than short-term softness. You crave momentum the way other people chase approval. Momentum becomes addictive in a productive way. This version of you is harder to influence. When someone tries to pull you back into old patterns, your response is a redirect, not a reaction. You answer with plans. You counter attempts to derail you with deadlines. That refusal to engage derails their attempts at control. Finally, vision is attractive because it is contagious. People want to be near construction, not collapse. Your focus draws collaborators, not critics. It creates demand, not dependence. You stop needing her gaze to validate your existence because your life confirms it every single day. Every morning you reinforce the map you've drawn, step by step, until the man in the mirror is unmistakable daily. She catches a glimpse of you and everything rearranges for a second. It might be a story, a hallway, or a mutual friend's laugh, but the image lands with weight. What she sees isn't theatrical. It's ordinary evidence that you're intact. The man who once crumpled at small provocations now holds a quiet shape. That sight doesn't accuse, it simply clarifies. Someone who once fit neatly into her expectations no longer fits the frame. That mismatch forces a private tally. She compares the memory she kept to the person occupying your days. It's not a soapbox, it's an audit. She notices details, fewer apologies, steadier eye contact, and absence of pleading. Small things stack into a new impression. What haunted you becomes proof you moved through it. Her surprise isn't dramatized, it's a tight internal shift. There is no confrontation, only an unavoidable inventory. She calculates what time and attention produced. She reckons with choices she made while you were still under construction. That reflection cuts because it reframes her past agency. You aren't a trophy on a shelf. You are a completed project she no longer recognizes. Her discomfort is private, not performative. It may be a pause mid-scroll or a sudden silence on the other end of a line. She will reread old pictures and find a gap between who you were and who you became. That gap grows louder than any argument ever sounded. The shock of it comes from losing leverage. Where once she nudged and you shifted, now she watches an immovable line. She is confronted by the consequence of not caring enough to stay engaged. Your composure becomes a mirror that reflects decisions back at her without commentary. It does not punish, it simply shows outcomes. That kind of mirror is more devastating than accusations because it leaves no easy rebuttal. You can't be blamed for your growth. When she meets you briefly, she experiences cognition. This man was real, not performative. No theatrics. No desperation. No cheap apologies. She measures your life by routines and results, not by promises. That yardstick reveals fidelity to yourself. In that instant she understands she lost a living standard, not just a person. Her regret, if it surfaces, isn't theatrical either. It's precise and quietly uncomfortable. It forces her to face where attention was withheld, where patience was replaced by indifference. Seeing you whole is a slow-acting consequence. It won't necessarily change her choices, but it will change her memory. The memory that once preserved your malleability dissolves under evidence of your rebuilding. When she walks away from that image, she carries a private ledger. It may not read as shame to anyone else, but it will read as an honest accounting to her. And that private accounting is enough. Sometimes the mirror doesn't demand an apology, it demands recognition. You don't give it to her. You keep moving forward. She can trace the distance between reaction and restraint. That distance reframes attraction as consequence. It teaches her that timing matters and presence is earned. Your life becomes a syllabus she failed to study. Quiet evidence redefines what she once dismissed as collateral. You move on without noise. Real distance doesn't come from blocking someone or vanishing for weeks. It starts the moment your mind stops orbiting their name. You wake up and the first thought isn't them, it's purpose. You stop scanning for signals, stop searching for closure in silence. You stop trying to decode mixed messages because you no longer need a message to function. That's the first real separation, when your peace becomes louder than your curiosity. It's not cold, it's clarity. You start living from a clean slate, not an emotional residue. You notice how much mental space is reclaimed when you're not running simulations of what if. The energy you once spent anticipating is redirected into producing. Distance becomes focus disguised as calm. You finally understand that ignoring chaos isn't avoidance, it's evolution. You no longer give access to your inner dialogue. She used to occupy your mind rent-free, now the lease has expired. Your thoughts belong to you again. That quiet independence radiates. It's not meant to impress, but it does. She feels it. Women are tuned to emotional frequencies, and she senses the silence has shifted tone. What used to carry ache now carries power. What used to seek reaction now sits comfortably in stillness. She can feel that you no longer flinch when her name comes up. That emotional neutrality is rare, and it disarms her more than anger ever did. She realizes the strings she once pulled don't connect to anything anymore. There's no response to measure, no heartbeat to manipulate. Your world no longer pauses when she reappears. That's when the dynamic flips. You've gone from reacting to existing, from waiting to creating, from emotional dependence to self-command. The air around you changes, people sense it. You walk differently, speak slower, and look more present. You're not trying to seem detached, you just are. Because detachment isn't pretending not to care. It's realizing caring doesn't mean surrendering your peace. You've made peace with distance. You don't need revenge, closure, or conversation. You understand that not everyone deserves front-row access to your evolution. Some people were meant to be lessons, not lifelong subscribers. That awareness gives your energy a different gravity. You attract calmer connections, deeper conversations, cleaner circles. There's no chaos left to feed on, no emotional debris to recycle. You've stopped responding to noise disguised as affection. That's when she notices the real shift. Your silence isn't reactive anymore. It's sovereign. It doesn't wait, doesn't hope, doesn't chase. It just exists in peace. And she can feel it. It's the difference between a man who's hurting quietly and a man who's healed completely. Your distance becomes an aura that speaks louder than your presence ever did. Because when you no longer need to be understood or chosen, you reach a rare frequency, freedom. You stop performing emotional availability for people who once took it for granted. You don't burn bridges, you build walls of serenity. And that's the kind of distance no one can close. She'll replay the moments in her head, wondering when you stopped needing her energy to breathe. The truth is simple, you didn't walk away to hurt her. You walked away to hear yourself again. Letting go doesn't require a grand exit. Sometimes it's the steady refusal to replay old scripts. You stop obsessing over imagined conversations and start honoring what's real. Releasing isn't erasing, it's refusing to carry pain as standard baggage. You stop living in reruns and start rehearsing routines that build you. Graceful release is an economy of feeling. Treat emotions like currency and stop funding debts that never yield interest. That means declining needless arguments and exiting cycles that cost dignity. Letting go looks like calm when provoked, a deep breath instead of a show. You move as if your priorities need no validation from someone who already abdicated care. The work happens inside. You stop feeding the same problem. Sometimes that looks like muting threads, deleting snapshots, or not responding to invitations to reopen old wounds. It's not mean, it's preservation. You maintain your mind like a craftsman tends a tool. Small corrections, steady upkeep, no spectacle. Boundaries are the architecture of this piece. They're short, enforceable choices that protect momentum. You say no without venom and yes with purpose. That clarity removes ambiguity and makes your actions reliable. People learn what you accept and what you won't tolerate. Predictability creates safety. You don't weaponize silence. Quiet becomes soil for regeneration, not a trap. You let thoughts settle instead of letting them rot. You refuse to broadcast healing for applause. Most recovery happens in private because it's a revision, not a performance. Part of the method is forgiving what never deserved the weight you gave it. Forgiveness isn't an open door to old patterns. It's removing charge so your space can be repopulated with better choices. That release clears room for focus and sharper daily habits. Ownership is crucial. Accept your part and stop letting past failures define your future. Admitting your role makes penance practical rather than perpetual. When you owe yourself repair, you fix it and move on. Resentment has no purchase when you own mistakes and correct course. Replace longing with rituals. A morning protocol, a block of undisturbed work, consistent training, these anchor identity. Rituals produce evidence you are advancing, independent of who's missing. They convert desire into structure. Letting go with dignity is strategic, not sentimental. It's dismantling dependency while building self-reliance. You choose growth over grievance and maturity over spectacle. Quiet upgrades are permanent because they change the baseline, not the performance. Others will notice in small increments. Fewer calls returned, steadier promises kept, a quiet calendar filled with priorities. The consequence is not theatrical revenge but a recalibration of expectations around you. You become harder to use and easier to rely on. That reliability rewires relationships. Some tighten, some fall away. You don't mourn the exits. You mark the lessons and preserve the energy for what advances you. In time, your life reflects choices, not apologies. You keep moving, steady and unapologetic. Rise from what was broken and you rediscover an authority that doesn't shout to be seen. Pain was a tutor, now discipline is your teacher. This rebirth isn't performative reclaiming, it's a slow reassembly of habit and honor. You build a private chapel of routine, cold mornings, focused sessions, chores completed before others wake. That structure is the new catechism of your presence. You stop apologizing for taking space and start treating occupancy as responsibility. Authority grows from consistency, not dominance. Men who radiate centered strength cultivate schedules, not moods. They respond to commitments rather than to whims. That steadiness invites respect before a word is spoken. You refine your appetite for life. Where before you chased validation, you now pursue mastery. Mastery is less glamorous. It's lonely work and it demands trade-offs. You learn to pick solitude over surface-level noise because the former manufactures depth and the latter recycles distraction. You return to principles you once neglected: punctuality, courage, honesty, follow-through. Those traits compound like compound interest. They transform how the world answers you. Self-respect becomes visible in the small things. Turning up on time, finishing what you start, honoring promises to yourself. Those tiny honors accumulate into a visible backbone. Boundaries become not a weapon but a map. They show people where to meet you and where to stop. Clear limits undo years of ambiguity and replace bargaining with clarity. Discipline takes shape as ritual. You train the body to obey the mind's edict and the mind to trust the body's insistence. Movement, work, rest, each has a slot in the day and a job to perform. This alignment reduces internal friction and frees energy for creative direction. You develop a humility that isn't weak, it's realistic. You know your faults and you correct them without theatrics. Confidence flips from posturing to being useful. You do things that matter because they matter, not to prove anything. That kind of usefulness attracts people who are tired of performance. You re-enter rooms with less noise and more effect. Speech becomes sparse and decisive because your time is rationed for utility. You honor silence as part of conversation. Leadership now looks like accountability. You take responsibility without excuses and hold others to their word without hostility. People find that steadiness magnetic because it creates safety in uncertainty. Your presence starts to function as infrastructure, something reliable that others can lean on during storms. You stop explaining who you are. Your life explains it for you. Pride yields to productive solitude. Solitude yields to improved outcome. You rebuild social circles with intention, choosing allies who elevate rather than consume. You prefer energy that multiplies to energy that drains. The rebirth of masculine energy is not an aggression, it's a reclamation of order. It's the decision to be useful, to be steady, to be someone who doesn't require permission to exist. Once you live like that, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a strategy. People are drawn to fixed points in a chaotic world. You become one of them. Keep rebuilding quietly, daily. Your reformed habits will outlast short temptations and rewrite the story people tell about you with relentless calm. This is the final reckoning, not drama, but the slow arrival of facts that unsettles quietly. You didn't stage revenge. You became undeniable through ordinary improvements. Outgrowing someone doesn't scream, it accumulates into a pattern that demands notice. As your life gains shape, it contradicts the version she once kept in mind. The difference is not loud, it is unavoidable. Small consistencies become proof. Steady work, clean mornings, promises kept. Those reliable acts add up into evidence she can't easily dismiss. When she catches sight of your days mapped by purpose, her certainty about the past erodes. That erosion is uncomfortable because it suggests her choices had consequences she didn't predict. This is not a punishment, It's the natural math of progress. People forget that progress rearranges relationships without permission. What used to be pliable is now set. You don't perform to be seen, you simply show up with intention. Your standards stop bending for convenience. The result is a contrast between memory and present reality. That contrast operates like a quiet shockwave. It forces reflection without a single accusation. She realizes what she traded away when she notices your life functioning without her input. That realization is private and it lands more deeply than any public argument. It invites internal questions rather than public explanations. There's no need for confrontation when evidence does the work on its own. Your well-being becomes a mirror she can't avoid. It doesn't scold, it clarifies what was possible. That clarity often produces regret because it reframes the past as a missed opportunity. Regret is a private weather that arrives slowly and lingers in the mind. It doesn't always cause action, but it changes how memory edits itself. Seeing you whole can alter how she understands earlier choices. It reframes her narrative from justified distance to careless loss. That cognitive shift is disorienting because it exposes omission without malice. It asks uncomfortable questions. When did attention lapse? Why did patience end? What did indifference allow? Those questions demand honest answers that are rarely simple. They reveal gaps between intention and impact. When your life demonstrates progress, it highlights other people's stagnation by comparison. That comparative angle is why the sight of your steady forward movement can feel like reproach. It's hard to hold a version of someone in mind when evidence shows a different outcome was possible. You don't provide explanations because you don't owe them. Your growth is a personal metric, not a public spectacle. Allowing your life to be the statement keeps the moral plane and the tone calm. She may try to rationalize or rewrite the past, but the present resists misinterpretation. Concrete results resist spin. They leave fewer outlets for denial. The truth of your rebuilt life lands as consequence, not vengeance. It teaches a lesson by example. Neglect has effects and healing builds measurable value. Some people change course, others carry the record of what they chose. Either way, your advancement remains intact. You become evidence of a life prioritized correctly. And when remembrance meets reality, there is a silent accounting that cannot be undone. Keep moving forward. Let that quiet truth rewrite what history thought it owned. You weren't losing her, you were reclaiming a life that fit you. Pain pulled back a curtain and you stepped through it. Instead of clinging to fragments, you set about rebuilding the frame. There's a clarity to coming back to yourself. It's not theatrical. It's a steady, stubborn reassembly of priorities and principles. Every small choice stacks into identity. You keep promises to yourself first. That loyalty becomes louder than any old argument. Mornings become deliberate. Wake, move, produce, no permissions needed. You sketch plans with deadlines and follow them. Action replaces yearning. The man who once sought answers now designs solutions. Respect returns naturally when you act like you matter. You don't demand it, you earn it by daily basics. Addressing weakness, finishing tasks, showing up on time. Those ordinary disciplines build a backbone that others feel before they understand it. Presence starts to mean something because it is backed by consistent work. You cut toxic repetitions and keep what grows. Relationships are audited with the same seriousness as investments. Who returns value? Who drains energy? The answers guide your time allotment. You prioritize depth, not volume. Conversations need substance now. Small talk has less of your bandwidth. There is a humility in progress. You acknowledge mistakes, fix them, and move on. That humility isn't self-effacement, it's practical correction. Pride is replaced by competence. Competence is quieter and more persuasive. It wins without boasting. You learn to lead yourself. Decisions are made from a center that's been tested. You don't outsource your direction to other people's moods. You plan, execute, adjust. This self-leadership makes you reliable and, in time, irreplaceable in your circles. Reliability breeds trust, and trust becomes the currency of serious connections. Sovereignty shows in boundaries. You stop negotiating your worth. You set terms, time, respect, effort. People adapt or fall away. That's the cost of clarity. It's a trade that frees you from performative cycles. You stop coaching people through your life, you live it. Energy management becomes a craft. You guard your hours, your attention, your recovery. You know when to push and when to rest. That rhythm protects momentum. It also makes your presence rare and valuable, not commonplace and cheap. Attraction shifts when you're whole. You stop seeking mirrors, you build structures. Attention follows competence. Interest comes from witnessing somebody who's constructing a future instead of rehearsing a past. That kind of pull feels inevitable because it's rooted in reality, not narrative. Freedom is the final product. It's not the absence of ties but the presence of choice. You choose how to spend your life, who to allow in, and what to defend. That sovereignty is magnetic and terrifying in equal measure to those who once relied on your malleability. You teach by example rather than argument. Your life becomes the curriculum for anyone paying attention. There's economy in that, fewer conversations, more outcomes. You move forward without looking for permission or apology. Return to yourself with intent. Build habits that outlast moods. Protect your time and your dignity. When you are whole, you aren't waiting for approval, you're offering presence. That presence is the work. It's the quiet victory that rewrites your story without fanfare.